Welcome back. The task at hand today is building the front porch of the house. If you remember, way back when we were doing the foundation and the footings, we beefed up the footings and used some sonotubes to pour 4 columns specifically to hold up this part of the project. I've been anxious for weeks now about the appearance of the front of this place and whether or not the porch will balance out the proportions as you drive up the street. We are about to find out. Now, all of the details about the porch are noted on the plans very clearly. But at this point, we're actually building it more off of the site conditions, off of the house itself, than off of the plans, if that makes sense. In other words, no matter what the plans say, we need it to match the house here as it's built. So I'm using the laser to establish the heights and cut the tops off of these 4x6s to the correct height. The correct height, as shown on the plans and as verified by what we need to build here, is 9 feet above the finished floor of the house. Setting these beams up here with the lift is pretty straightforward. The thing you can't see very well is that the posts are very securely braced to the house and to the ground. Putting these beams up here makes them extremely top-heavy, and you don't want these things tipping over. In addition to that, anytime you're setting beams, you've got to scooch them around a little bit here and there can be a lot of lateral pressure if the beam needs to slide even a small amount on the top of the post. So really making sure things are braced properly and independently of your scaffold is important, because if it does go down, you don't want it dragging the scaffold down with it. With these beams now firmly set and still braced 100%, we start stacking the rafters. Now, I cut these rafters for the front porch off of the camera, and I followed the same method I used on the back porch. Measure the span, use a framing square and the roof pitch on the rafter table to calculate the length, and just like the back porch, I had to remember and account for the 1.5 inch thickness of the tongue and groove car decking at the overhang. And just like before, first I made a pattern rafter, then brought it out, climbed up there, tested it. What's that going to look like? Can you tell?
Looks great.
So I'm hanging the rafters on the ledger with Simpson joist hangers. They're brackets. They're joist hangers. You usually see them in decks holding up, pressure-treated joists around the perimeter of a deck or something similar. You always see them when a structural member is attached to a ledger. But the difference here today is I'm using my nail gun to initially tack the joist hangers in place. This takes a little practice. And maybe sometime we'll make a video showing it up close. But I really don't recommend it. In fact, don't try this, because you're basically shooting the nail right into the hole, and the hole is almost exactly the same size as the nail. It's dangerous, but I'm only doing it for 1 or 2 nails per joist, just enough to hold the bracket in place for the initial install. We still have to really nail it off with the correct Tico framing hardware fasteners to achieve the proper strength. And these are hand driven, or you can use a palm nailer like we did in other places in this house. Now these rafters on our front porch are a bit different than the way we've done it in the other places that are similar on the house. And your first clue to that is that I'm cutting a full-blown bird's mouth in these and a plumb cut at the top. Now we did this on the back porch as well, if you remember, with the bird's mouth because they were resting on beams, and these will be as well. But the difference with this location is that these rafters are reaching all the way up to and hanging on the ledger at the top, just like the common rafters. In fact, that means these are common rafters. They aren't false tails at all. They are real rafters with long tails and nothing false about them. Our common rafters that are in between the 3x8s are 2x10s. So there is an 1.5 inch difference in height between the 3x8 and the common rafter 2x10s that we're cutting. To even everything out, I'm furring the 3x8s up 1.5 inches with a 2x4. This brings everything into a plane so the OSB roof sheathing can cover it up flat, straight, uniform. Now compared to other parts of the house, this porch is pretty comfortable to work on. The dormer windows provide easy access off and on the roof. The pitch is gentle, and we have a nice scaffold out front to move around on. This little transition between the steep 9.5/12 pitch of the main roof and the shallower 4.25/12 pitch of the porch roof is a little more complicated than it looks right off the bat. Now, when we were working at the very top of the roof, on a transition that looked similar from the outside, I was able to overstack it. That is, lay the top rafters on top of the roof below and get a nice smooth transition with a nice solid place to work. I can't do that here because all of this work is visible from underneath. We need our tongue and groove to stay trim and clean because it is exterior finish, and so I'm going to move a little slower through this part. Also, the end of the glulam beam that is holding up these rafters is cantilevered out beyond the last 4x6 post. And the barge rafter that sits on that beam is cantilevered 4 feet beyond the end of the beam itself. So establishing all of these points, lines, and planes was a real head scratcher while standing in space above these rocks. As you can see, adding the front porch really brings the elevation of the house into focus, sort of ties the whole thing together. It's finally starting to look like that rendering that we've been showing you, and that, I will tell you, is a real relief to me. There's also something really satisfying about seeing the house start to match up with that rendering. Nate and I both have loved the way this house looks ever since we first sketched it out, ever since we saw that first computer rendering in the front elevation. And we knew, and you need to know, that there's always a risk when your expectations are high that you're going to be disappointed, that you're setting yourself up. Well, this time, we're not disappointed at all. The house looks great. It fits on this lot just right, and as far as we're concerned, the proportions of everything work nicely together. Now, if you're enjoying this series and would like to support what we're doing here at Essential Craftsman, there are details in the description of how you can do that, and there are a lot of different ways. It's really a pleasure to put this content together and share how houses are built in the western United States. Now, clearly, every house and situation will be different, and this house is not typical in many ways, but hopefully you're getting an idea of what it's like to be on a job site, the types of problems that are being solved there. We also hope that you're getting a feel for the overall pace and order of operations on a construction site, and as well that you're getting a feel for some of the risks and challenges that builders face every single day. Maybe even a sense of the great rewards and satisfying accomplishment that it is to build something. As a builder, it always feels great to walk away from a project that you know is going to stand the test of time, all the while keeping families safe and warm. Now, houses often have a sort of a personality or a spirit of their own, and it's fun also to be able to bring that into the world. If you're watching this series, I hope you're able to feel a little bit of that satisfaction and a little bit of that sense of accomplishment as well. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.